First of all, it's my extreme pleasure to welcome Reverend Father Thomas John, Manager UC College, to today's program. Welcome, Father. Next, I would like to invite Dr. David Satch Matthew, Principal UC College, to today's webinar session. And today we are having two resource persons, Ms. Gauri Balachandran, Knowledge Officer, ICT Academy of Kerala, and John J. Padamadan, Knowledge Officer, ICT Academy of Kerala. I express my hearty welcome to Ma'am and Sir to today's webinar session. Next, I would like to invite our HOD, Mr. Agil TV, to today's program. And also, I welcome all the faculties and students from various institutions who are attending today's program. Now we can start our session. Before that, I request all the participants to mute your mic and turn off your cameras for a smooth full presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, ma'am, for that wonderful introduction. And I hope I am audible.
Yeah. A little bit more is needed, is required, I think, sir.
Okay,
Can
fine.
you increase your, okay.
Yeah. So as ma'am rightly mentioned, through this session, we are just going to give you an overview of what is artificial intelligence, what is machine learning, what are the other terms associated with that. And of course, almost all of you might have heard these terms before. So we will, directly start the session, without wasting much time. Yeah, so I hope that PPT is visible to all of you. So as I already told, we are going to give you an overview on what is machine learning and what is artificial intelligence. So first we will.
Your voice is very feeble.
Okay, is it okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so we will start off with a video. So I think you might not be able to hear the audio. So you will have the subtitles. So please see what is written in the subtitles. Okay.
Doctors and nurses in Italy need all the help they can get, including from Tommy, the robot. Robots like Tommy operate in the most infectious wards. Staff here hope he'll reduce the risks of catching the disease by avoiding direct contact with patients.
It allows us to use less protective clothing, masks and overalls, which at this time are in scarce supply. The advantage is therefore double.
The northern region of Lombardy accounts for most of Italy's known coronavirus cases. Here, the robots help relay vital information between patients and doctors remotely and at any time of the day.
This robot helps us monitor some clinical parameters of the patient, for example, heart rate, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, blood pressure, and also mechanical aspects of respiration.
In Giel in Belgium, hospitals are testing whether robots equipped with ultraviolet lights can disinfect wards to keep patients safe, even in hard-to-reach areas.
Please leave the room, close the door, and start the disinfection.
The machine's ultraviolet light quickly kills bacteria.
We want to make sure that we touch every surface by the lights, and this can be done by the robot as it drives itself through the room that is treated.
In India's southern state of Tamil Nadu, robots are lending a helping hand by delivering vital supplies.
Robotic equipment also available for giving food and medicine to the patients. So it's a very good initiative, highly appreciable.
Others are on security patrol in Tunisia's capital. This one, dubbed RoboCop, is guarding empty streets, ensuring no one breaks the lockdown imposed last month. Spotting unmanned drones is slowly becoming a regular occurrence. Many are being deployed as part of coronavirus awareness campaigns. as well as making sure that everyone stays indoors and maintains social distancing. While the human touch remains essential in times of crisis, robots are stepping in where people can't. Rahila Mohammed, Al Jazeera.
Yeah, so in the video you have seen humans using robots, in this pandemic time from Italy and to a neighboring state, Tamil Nadu. So in order to use such a robot for this kind of operations, first the robot has to be fed with data. Now this data should be cleaned and analyzed in the right way, so that it becomes easier for the machine to understand the nature. Sorry, can everybody put on mute, please? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so in order to make the robot understand this data, it has to be, processed and analyzed in the right way, and then this cleaned data should be fed into the robot. So this is where we use data analytics. So data analytics is mainly used for cleaning, visualizing, and analyzing the given data. After predicting, we'll enable the machine, to react onto some particular situations, and it will try to put it into a situation and see how it reacts and responds. And this is where artificial intelligence comes into existence. So these three are three different steps. Okay. So this picture gives you an idea on the difference between machine learning, or how you can differentiate machine learning, data science, and artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, actually it comes on top of all of this. So from the picture you can see the data science, above that you have deep learning, above that you have machine learning, and above that you have AI. So AI incorporates all machine learning, deep learning, and data science. So AI, or artificial intelligence, refers to the simulation of human intelligence into machines. Okay, that means a machine programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. Okay, so this term is actually also used to or applied to any machine that is capable of doing all the things that a human mind does. Okay, for example, learning or problem solving and all those things. So nowadays, when people hear the term artificial intelligence, the first thing that comes to all of your mind is a robot, right? So this is because almost all of the big budget films and novels, they create a robot in their films, which will cause some harm to the earth. Okay, so this is why when you talk about artificial intelligence, everyone will first think about a robot. So now this is because day by day our technology is advancing. So whenever the technology is advancing, the benchmark we set before is becoming outdated. Okay, so some time back, machines that calculate the basic functions or recognize text from OCR. OCR means optical character recognition. That was considered as AI. But now, as the technology is advanced further, this is no longer considered as an AI. Okay, because every day the technology gets updated. So next comes machine learning. So machine learning, actually it can be told as a subset of AI, artificial intelligence. So ML, machine learning, we refer to it as ML, and ML is the study of computer algorithms that improve automatically through experience. Okay, so as I already mentioned in the case of that robot below, we fed it with data and it tries to find some patterns from the data, and it tries to learn from the experience it get. So, and I rightly mentioned it is a subset of artificial intelligence. Then machine learning algorithms is it is built it is built using a mathematical algorithm. So behind every machine learning model there is a strong mathematical background behind it, and this machine learning is actually used to make predictions or decision. We don't have to explicitly program it. Okay, we are just giving the data, and with the help of this machine learning models we are making the predictions. Okay, and then comes deep learning. So deep learning actually again can be told as a subset of machine learning as well as AI. So deep learning is actually, it is a very specific method inside machine learning, which incorporates neural networks. Successive neural networks layers are there, inside deep learning, and these neural networks, learn from the data in an iterative manner. It is like an iteration. So this deep learning is very useful when you use unstructured data. The most of the data that is available in real world is unstructured. It will not have a structure. So in such cases, we use deep learning. So this deep learning neural networks, it is designed in such a way that it mimics how a human brains work. So deep learning or this neural network is designed keeping human brains in mind. So the computers can be trained to deal with purely defined abstractions and problems. So just like how a humans think, we enable the computer also to do it in such a way. Okay. So neural networks and deep learning are often used in this image recognition, speech recognition, then computer vision and applications like that. So nowadays it is again gaining a lot of importance. Okay. And then comes data science. So data science, it is an incorporation of multiple parental disciplines like data science, then software engineering, data engineering, ML, predictive analytics, data analytics, and much more. So and it includes a retrieval, collection, ingestion, and transformation of large amount of data. So these four things are collectively known as big data. And as rightly mentioned in this picture, data science also incorporates a lot of maths, statistics, and visualization and EDA. EDA has a lot of full forms, but in this particular context, EDA stands for exploratory data analytics. Okay. So this data analytics, it is very helpful in helping a person to incorporate in his business. So by using suppose if a shopkeeper is analyzing his past data, then he will be able to make very useful insights from the past data and do a lot of things towards his future. So that is what data science means. And why is machine learning the future? So nowadays, this, as I already mentioned, artificial intelligence and machine learning is gaining a lot of importance. Why is it so? So since the dawn of 2005, that means until 2005, humans had created 130 exabytes of data. So you already know how big 130 exabytes will be. And now it is 2020. So this generation, maybe through laptops, mobile phones, and everything. And in 2005, you can imagine how many people will be using mobile phones and laptops. And now it is 2020. And almost 99% of Earth's population will be using a mobile phone. So you can imagine how much data is getting generated. Okay. So as you can see in the graph, there is a 50-fold growth from the beginning of 2010 to the end of 2020. So in the x-axis, you can see the years, and in the y-axis, you can see the data, amount of data that is in exabytes. So up to around 9,000 exabytes of data, data scientists can manipulate and work on those data. And up to around 12,000 exabytes, machines can do. And beyond around 12 to 13,000 exabytes, only machine learning can process those data. So that is the important. The machine learns under a supervision. The class labels will be available. So here you can see in the training data, we have given that it is apples and cupcakes. So the machine is already told that we are giving the data of apple and cupcakes, and it will make a model to predict apple and cupcakes. So when a new image, so here you can see a new image is given to that machine learning model, and it will predict that it belongs to the class cupcake. So this is how supervised learning works. Okay, so in supervised learning, the machine learns under guidance. So we are guiding the machine that these all are the things that we are giving to you. So class labels will be also given. And it is again further classified into two. We have regression model and we have classification model. So regression model will predict a finite value. For example, if I'm asking a question, how much amount of rain will happen tomorrow? So there you have to predict the exact millimeter or centimeter of rain that will happen tomorrow. So that is a regression model where you predict a finite number. Whereas in classification, we just classify things. So if I am reframing the question that I asked before, instead of asking how much amount of rain, I am asking will it rain tomorrow? So now the answer is yes or no. So that is a classification problem. Okay, so I hope you understand the difference. So the next comes unsupervised learning. So in this, we don't have the class label. So here you can see, before when we fed the data into the machine, we told that it is apples and cupcakes. But here we are not doing that. We are just giving the raw input or raw data into the machine. So the machine, what happens is it finds some patterns, it finds some features that are familiar, and then it will interpret in such a way that it will do the interpretation and it will apply some algorithms, it will do the pre-processing and all, and it will group the outputs. Okay, so it will, so here you can see there is 3 groups. So it can only group it into 3 different groups because the machine don't know what they are. So it can only group it into different groups. So machine learns without any guidance. So no label will be given to the data. And so what the machine has to do is it has to find out the patterns which are available inside the data. Okay, and it is again further divided into 2, which is association and clustering. So I will just show you an example, to better understand this supervised and unsupervised learning. Suppose I have a data set like this. I hope it is visible. Suppose I have a data set like this. So these are my features. These 5 are my features. This actually some weight. This is some shape. This is some color. And so I have some features like this. And I am giving these 5 features as input to the machine. So now what the machine does is it will go through each features. So first it will go through this feature. So it is 300 kilogram of weight. So it will make it as group 1. It goes to the next feature. So it has 10 grams. So it has made it as group 2. Similarly, since all of them is different, then it has grouped it into 7 different groups. Now it comes to the next feature. So here it is mentioned that it is 300 kilograms with 4 legs. So again, classify it as group 1. And now again it comes to the next data point. So here it is mentioned that it is 10 grams round in shape. So now it has mentioned again it as group 2. So now this is again group 1 and group 2. And when it comes here, it sees that again it is a round in shape. So since these 2 are familiar, this machine will again group it as group 2. And again it will go to the next one. So here it again find a pattern that here it has also 4 legs. So here it again has 4 legs. So it will group as group 1. Now again it found a new pattern. So it will create a new group. So here it found a similar pattern as here. So it will group as group 2. And here again the same pattern. So it is group 3. Similarly, it goes through each and every feature and it finds some pattern which is inside there in the data. This is known as unsupervised learning. Okay, so this is known as unsupervised learning. Now let us take this case. It's the same data set that is given before, but now here I have the class labels: weight, shape, color, smell, and eyes. And I am asking the machine to classify it as whether an animal or a fruit or a human. If we are giving this conditions, then the machine can easily identify that this is an animal and this is a fruit and this is again a fruit. Sorry. Fruit, and this is again an animal. This is again a human. This is a fruit and a human. So this is what a supervised learning will be. Okay, so machine learns under guidance. So we have the class labels. We have told the machine that you have to classify it into these three categories. So the machine will do it. So this is the difference between supervised and unsupervised learning. I hope now it is clear. Now we have the third category, which is called reinforcement learning. So in this given image, you can see a robot, a diamond, and the fire. So the aim of this robot, is to go to this diamond, without by avoiding the fire. Okay. So what this robot does, this robot will try to move through all the path that is possible. Okay, and it learns some pattern while moving through these different paths. That means if it walks through the fire, it gets some feedback, which is a negative feedback. Whereas when it walks through a path which does not have a fire, then it gets a positive feedback. In that way, by getting this positive and negative feedback, the robot will finally conclude a path in which it can reach the diamond without walking through any of the fire. So this is known as a reinforcement learning, or something very similar to a kind of trial and error method, or a very similar very similar to when a baby starts walking first. And at the very first stage, what happens is it will again try to stand up by holding on to something. The baby will fall down again, it will try to hold on to something, and it will stand up, and after standing up it will make a few steps, maybe one step for the first time. It will again fall, it will again wake stand up and again make a walk, but finally the baby will be able to walk. So that is something that can be related to reinforcement learning. So these are the three types of machine learning models, machine learning types. Okay. Now, these are the main points in reinforcement learning. There will be an input that should be an initial state, or it should be from where the model should start, and the output, that is our problem statement. The model should reach this particular output. Then there will be training, or this reinforcement happening inside. It will try all the possible methods that it can reach the output. So the model continuously learns, and it will then find the best solution to reach the output. Okay. So these are some of the real life applications of machine learning. You can see there are a lot of applications in e-commerce, manufacturing, banking, healthcare, transport, and finance. So I will I will tell you some very particular examples. In one is in e-commerce. In e-commerce, I think you all will be using Flipkart, Amazon, or any of the shopping sites. There you have something known as product recommendation. So product recommendation is actually a very important application of machine learning. So Amazon Amazon tells us that 35% of their sales is happening through recommendations. Okay. So that 35% is not a small amount. It is a big amount considering Amazon. Okay. So that is possible because Amazon has a very powerful recommendation algorithm that is happening in its backend. So the product recommendation is a very important application of machine learning in e-commerce. Now coming to the banking applications, fraud prevention. So fraud means you might have come across many of the banking frauds that is happening now. For example, credit card frauds, then and many others. So by using a powerful machine learning algorithm, a bank can identify, suppose if a bank is giving to me a loan to me, suppose I'm taking a loan from a bank, what the bank can do is bank can take my past loan data. Suppose if I have taken any loans in the past, how was my repayment status, whether I have paid it every month, whether I have made any dues. Okay, so similarly, by taking the data of 4 or 5 customers, not 4 or 5, maybe around 100 or 150 customers, it can find a pattern. It can find it can make a machine learning model which will predict if a new customer is given to that model, he will pay it or not. Okay, so similarly, that can be done. And again, in healthcare applications, machine learning and AI is is finding tremendous applications in healthcare. So now, actually, in that poster you might have seen, I am a biomedical engineer. So some of my friends right now is working on robot assisted surgeries, and in a hospital in Ernakulam they have installed a robot which can do surgeries and to do knee replants and all those things. So the doctor need not be there inside the operation theater. He can remotely control the robot from some other room, and this robot will be doing all this surgery for the doctor. But the doctor has to guide the robot. The robot is not doing it on its own, but the doctor has to guide the robot. So what the difference is, when a doctor or when a human is doing a surgery and when a robot is doing the surgery, the difference will come in that precision. Or suppose if I want to make a lesion at a particular point, if a human is doing it, there is a possibility that it can move a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit left or right. But when a robot is doing it, suppose if you mark a point and give it to the robot, the incision will be very proper. It won't give an inch to the right, to the left, up or down. So that in that way, this machine learning is finding a lot of applications in healthcare. So similarly, it has its own applications in manufacturing, and transport and all other fields as well. So that is pretty much I had to cover. Now Gabri will take you through the demo on a machine learning model. So over to you, Gabri.
So yeah, thank you, John. I'll just present my screen. So I hope my slides are visible.
Yes, it is.
So, so John was talking about how supervised
Excuse me, ma'am. Can you increase your sound a little bit more? It is not so much audible. That's why.
Okay. So am I audible? So I'll be taking you through a demo for machine learning. So there is a platform called Teachable Machine, which is a web tool that makes it fast and easy to create machine learning models for your projects. And there is no coding required. There is a coding that has been done at the back end. So I'll just search for Teachable Machine in Google Chrome. So this is the one. It's developed by Google. So as you can see, there are three types of projects given over here. One is the image project, where you can upload your pictures or any other kinds of pictures related to anything. Like today I'll be demonstrating pictures using cats and dogs. You can even use pictures of food items or different vegetables, fruits, and see if the machine is able to classify it or not into fruits and different fruits or different animals. Second one is the audio project, where teach based on 1 second long sounds. So we give different kinds of sounds and then ask the machine if it can classify between different kinds of sounds. Then the third one is the pose project. So you give different kinds of poses, and based on the images that you have given, we will see whether the machine is able to classify the different postures. So today I'll be doing the image project here. So I click on this. So they ask you class 1, class 2, and you can keep adding a lot number of more classes over here. So today I'll be just using a minimum of what we require is 2 classes. So to see whether the machine is able to train itself and classify what is given, we at least need 2 classes. So you can add as many number of classes you want. If you are say you give in the first class you're giving different kinds of apples like green apple, the normal apple, and all that. And in the second one you're giving the pictures of mangoes in different shapes and sizes. In the third one you can add some other fruits and then train the model and see if it is working or not. So today I'll be using 2 sets of classes, that is cats and dogs, and see whether the model is able to train itself and classify whether it is a cat or a dog. So I'll be uploading pictures. So instead of this, you can even switch on your webcam and train, like you have your friend with you. You can train images of your face in different from different sides and in different angles, and then train the model and put your friend's picture over here and train and see if the model is able to recognize the difference between you and your friend. So today I'll be using pictures from my own laptop. So I have about 20 pics over here. So you need at least a 20 to 30 pictures to train the model. So at least that many number of pictures are needed. So I select all this and I put it over here. It's better if the number of pictures are how much more on, depending on that, the model will be much better. So if the number of pictures keep increasing, then it is a much better model and it can train itself in a much better way. So I've just taken for easiness to show, I have just taken 20 samples. You can put 100, 200, 300, any number of samples. Now I click on train the model. So now in the back end, there is a training happening using a machine learning algorithm. Now this is basically your supervised learning technique where you have given class labels and then asking it to train itself and then see whether the machine is able to tell whether it's a cat or a dog. So now it will take about 1 minute. So we'll choose a file. So I have so I had 2 classes like cats and dogs. Now I have put some test images which were not included in these 2 folders. I have some 2 test images for cat and I'll put the new image and see if it is able to classify it or not. So we'll see. So see, since the number of pictures are very less, it is saying class 1, that is cat, is 58% and class 2 is 42%. Now, if we had more number of pictures over here, it would have been more accurate. Now, if I put the second picture, now it is more accurate. It is saying 98% that it is class 1 and some 2% that it is class 2. Now, similar way, I'll put some pictures of dog, test pictures, and I'll see. So yeah, so this is perfectly saying that it is class 2. 100% it is showing that it is class 2 and not class 1. I'll put one more picture. So again, this is detecting perfectly, it is saying 100%. So since we saw that for cats, it was not able to completely, give you an accurate result, we should train this part much more and put more pictures over here so that it trains in a much better way. So this was a very simple demonstration of a machine learning algorithm. So there is a lot of coding happening behind this for this training, this model. A lot of coding and algorithms are going behind this for this final result to happen. So if you are interested in machine learning, you can enroll into any course for machine learning, and you will be able to understand in a much better way as to what is the specific model that is going behind these kinds of training, and then understand it in a much better way. So now I'll be showing you I'll show you an application of machine learning, which is very advanced. So it is a video. So I hope you can see. So the first one is lane detection. So the machine is which is installed in the car is telling you which is the right lane for you to move forward, and it is showing you in these green lines. It is detecting the lanes and showing you in which lane you have to move. The next is motion tracking. So it has started, tracking the other vehicles also, which are there in the front of you, and tracking the motion of each of these vehicles. Next is object detection. So now it starts detecting different types of objects like car. It is like how I showed you the example of cats and dogs. It is started detecting whether this is a car, then how much percentage of it is detecting it as a car. Then fusion with steering advice. So it is telling you there is a car over here, so you have to move towards the right. And it is showing you the right path through which you have to move. So that was one advanced, application of machine learning. Even behind this, a lot of, algorithms are working behind all these things. So this comes under the topics of advanced machine learning, like, computer vision, etc. So next, if we go to the tools required for ML. So first, it is Python. So Python is an interpreted high-level general-purpose programming language. So it was created by Guido van Rossum and first released in 1991. So Python's design philosophy emphasizes code readability. Its language constructs and object-oriented approach aim to help programmers write clear, logical code for small and large-scale projects. So Python is a very simple language. Anybody who has at least very basic idea of programming can easily learn Python and become an expert in Python. Next is R. It is again just like Python. It is another programming language. So R provides a wide variety of statistical and graphical techniques and is highly extensible. One of our strengths is the ease with which well-designed publication quality plots can be produced, including mathematical symbols and formulae where needed. So as you can see, why we should learn R. It is an open source language. It has cross-platform compatibility. It has advanced statistical language. So as John told, mathematics is a very important part of data analytics, machine learning, and AI. So if you have a very good background of mathematics and programming, it is just wonderful. So next, coming to NumPy. So NumPy is a library which is built on top of Python, a programming language which is adding support for large multidimensional arrays and matrices, along with a large collection of high-level mathematical functions to operate on these arrays. So it's an extension package for scientific computing with Python. Next, coming to scikit-learn. So as you saw, John was talking about the supervised learning techniques, unsupervised learning techniques, reinforcement learning techniques. So what scikit-learn does is it is the library from which we can import these models or the algorithms that is needed for the supervised learning techniques, unsupervised learning techniques, etc. So scikit-learn provides a range of supervised and unsupervised learning algorithms via a consistent interface in Python. So the library is focused on modeling data. So some popular groups of models provided by scikit-learn include clustering for grouping unlabeled data. So as you saw in unsupervised learning, you have unlabeled data. So that is basically called clustering. So that is that you can import through scikit. Then you have dimensionality reduction, that is for reducing the number of attributes in a data for summarization, visualization, and feature selection. So basically you have, say, like in the example that John showed, you had the uh, the attributes like the weight, the color, the shape, etc. If one of the attributes which is given as, you want to find if all the attributes are important for this data analysis or not, for that you use dimensionality reduction. Then feature extraction, again for defining attributes in image and text data. Then feature selection for identifying meaningful attributes from which to create supervised models. Then manifold learning, like for summarizing and depicting complex multidimensional data. So for all this, we use scikit-learn. And next we have TensorFlow. So you had seen in the video that I showed you, it was showing object detection with TensorFlow. So TensorFlow is again a Python library for fast numerical computing created and released by Google. And it is a symbolic math library and is also used for machine learning applications such as neural networks. So we have already discussed about deep learning, in which neural networks come into picture. So the name TensorFlow is derived from the operations that such neural networks perform on multi-dimensional data arrays, which are referred to as tensors. So next, coming to Keras. So Keras is an open source neural network library, again written in Python. It is capable of running on top of TensorFlow, R language, etc. So designed to enable fast experimentation with deep neural networks. So deep neural networks is an artificial neural network with multiple layers between the input and output layers. So the deep neural network finds the correct mathematical manipulation to turn the input into the output, whether it be a linear relationship or it be a non-linear relationship. So it focuses on being user-friendly, modular, and extensible. So TensorFlow provides both high-level and low-level APIs, while Keras provides only high-level APIs. So what is an API? The full form of API is an application program interface, which is basically a set of routines, protocols, and tools for building software applications. So basically an API specifies how software components should interact. So next, coming to the skills required for machine learning. So the first thing is for sure is expertise in computer fundamentals. You should have an idea about the computer fundamentals. Then you should have in-depth knowledge of programming skills like Python, R. Then you should have, as already mentioned so many times, that knowledge of probability, statistics, linear algebra, calculus, multivariable calculus. Then data modeling, you should know how to do the data modeling and how to evaluate the models that have been created by you. And one very important factor which is missing over here is you should be in any field you work, say data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, you should have the very good knowledge of the domain that you're working into. So if you're working in the education sector or healthcare sector or the finance sector, e-commerce sector, you should have a very good understanding of the domain that you're working in. So if you're working in the e-commerce sector, as to what is the sales trend that is currently going on, and what kinds of products are expected to be delivered to the clients, all these factors should be known by you, so that you can apply the skills that you have in machine learning or data analytics. Only if you have that very good domain knowledge, you can actually start implementing the skills that you already have in your hand. So next, coming to the current and emerging job opportunities in ML. So as you can see, the global machine learning market is projected to grow from $7.3 billion in 2020 to $30.6 billion in 2024, attaining a compound annual growth of 43%. So AI will create 2.3 million machine learning jobs by 2020. So that is this year. So it is according to a recent report from Gartner. LinkedIn's 2017 US, the emerging jobs report shows there are 9.8 times more machine learning engineers working today than 5 years ago, with 1,829 open positions listed on their site as of early 2018. So as you can see, machine learning is one of the hottest career choices today. So both data science and machine learning are generating more jobs than candidates right now. So we have an ultimate shortage of, the candidates who should be working in machine learning, and the requirement is very high. So making these two areas the fastest growing tech employment areas today. Next, these are the top 10 emerging jobs. So you can see the top position is acquired by machine learning engineer. And then at the fifth position, you have data scientist. Eighth position, you have big data developer. And you have the last one is Python developer. So for machine learning, being a machine learning engineer, you should have these skills. That is, you should be, good with Python programming, good with the machine learning algorithms, good with data science, then artificial intelligence, deep learning, analytics, then data mining, SQL, NoSQL, big data, then natural language processing, which is again a part of artificial intelligence, and Hadoop. So next, coming to the skills versus job roles. So as you can see, the maximum number of skills that is required for one particular position is data scientist. So becoming a data scientist might look a much more difficult task after seeing this, because you should have programming tools, data visualization and communication, data intuition, statistics, data wrangling, machine learning, and a little bit more, not very important part, but still very important part is software engineering, multivariable calculus, and linear algebra. Then coming to machine learning engineer, the most important skills that you should have is programming tools, data intuition, statistics, then machine learning and multivariable calculus and linear algebra. And the two not very important, but still important parts are the data visualization and software engineering. And data wrangling has the least importance. So you can see that data analyst requires only, most importantly, programming tools and data visualization. Again, coming to data engineer, programming tools, data wrangling, and software engineering are the most important parts that you should acquire skills on. So yeah, that was all from my side. So if you have any questions to me or John, you can ask it now.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. So now, dear participants, if anyone is having queries regarding today's topic, you can ask to our resource person now, or you can share that question in our chat box.
I have a question. Hello? Yeah. I have a question. As what you mentioned in the programming side, you have mentioned NumPy, scikit-learn, TensorFlow, Keras, and I just want to know how the TensorFlow, a part of the machine learning, does it provide the library, or does it act as an intermediate layer, or how does it work, the TensorFlow?
TensorFlow is actually a library that is used in machine learning, and the Keras and other libraries are actually built on top of TensorFlow. So when you're using Keras in this machine learning, when you import the library and run the program, you can see that it is that it will you give you a comment that TensorFlow is running in the backend. So TensorFlow is a library that is used in machine learning.
Okay, one more just clarification I need. Is it does it act as a work on a cloud, or can it be deployed on a standalone machine, and how it is deployed?
So you have to, install these libraries into your Python program. So when you start coding in Python, before that, what you have to do is you have to, install these libraries. So there is a method for installing these libraries into Python from where it can be accessible.
Okay, understood. No, my point is when you suppose you have the model which has been coded and it is been ready to run. So how do you deploy this on a? Suppose if I want to deploy it on a cloud. So what are the precautions to be made to like in the same way what for programming or the installation of application, or is it a different way?
No, you can always do this ML on cloud also. The thing is like performing this machine learning applications in local system as well as cloud. You should have some minimum requirements like your RAM, the hard disk capacity, then the GPU and all those things. So that requirements you have to be aware of, and the size of the data is that you are using. That is also again very important. If your data set is it is too much big, then the training time that you take for the data is very big. It will be very big. For example, if you suppose you have a 1 lakh data points in your data, then almost it will take around 3 to 4 minutes to train one model. So when you do it in the cloud, so that that requirements should be meted. That's all. So you can do this machine learning applications in cloud as well. For example, if you use Google Colab is actually a coding platform that is provided by Google that you can use. You can do coding there also. So instead of doing it in a machine, in a personal machine, what happens is when you code in Google Colab, that gets stored in the Google Drive. So that you can do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
So there is a question on what is Hadoop. So again, Hadoop is an open source framework. It is used to efficiently store and process large data sets. So ranging in size from gigabytes to petabytes of data. So instead of using one large computer to store and process the data, what Hadoop does is Hadoop allows clustering multiple computers to analyze massive data sets in parallel more quickly. So that makes the process much more easier. So that's what Hadoop is used for.
And again, one point that I would like to add is when Gauri, showed the Teachable Machine website, she told that we are giving the image as input and some processes happening in the backend. So what an ML engineer or an AI engineer is more concerned is about the backend. And of course, you can develop a front end as well, like what the Teachable Machine people have done. They have made a front end to their backend. Okay, and you can do that if you want. You can do that also by making. We have some libraries known as Flask or Pickle and all those things. So using that, you can develop a front end as well. Okay, so that is also possible.
So again, to create that front end, you should have a very good knowledge of what is going on at the back end. Right, John?
Oh, sorry, I didn't get that.
So to make the, the to create the front end, to develop the front end, we should have a very good knowledge of what is happening at the back end.
Yeah, yes.
So in supervised learning, we classify association. So it's again, we reach the same supervised learning technique, right?
No. It is not like that, Aruna. Actually, in supervised learning, in the example I showed you, right? In supervised learning, we can, correctly classify it, whether it is an animal, whether it is a fruit, or whether it is a, say, human. Whereas in unsupervised learning, it is not like that. You can only make it into group. So this belongs to this particular group. Okay. Suppose if in that same data set, I added a data point, which is a ball, which is a round shaped ball. So in unsupervised learning, what happens is this ball get clustered to, there is a possibility that this ball get clustered to the category of fruits, because it will have only 2 or 3 parameters that is different. Okay. So whereas in unsupervised learning, it will not happen, because it is an outlier. So it is not an animal, it is not a fruit. When it make a pattern with each feature, it will take it as an outlier. Okay.
Okay, any more questions from the participant side? I think there are no more questions from the participants now. So we can wind up the session. Now I request Mr. Ajan PJ, Assistant Professor, UC College, to deliver vote of thanks.
Hello. Yeah. It's very. It was a very nice session which two shared. Even the time limited. A lot many information has been shared in this session. Since we had gone through the different methods of machine learning and the different softwares which we use, and a demo session was also included in this session. So it gives an immense pleasure to say the vote of thanks to the two speakers, especially John J. Padamadan and Gauri Balachandran from ICT Academy, both are officers of ICT Trivandrum. And I take this opportunity to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the Union Christian College, Alva, as well as the organizing team of Department of Electronics and Computer Maintenance. I say the vote of thanks to both of you, since it was a wonderful session. It gave immense pleasure to say that a lot many things has been explained. Even the time was limited. It was explained in a very good with notes which has been given, which was very helpful to understand, and the description which was given, which was very easily understandable. And it gave the other way around, if you could say, it presented the why we should go for machine learning, and the need of the society of machine learning, and how we can attain, or how we can obtain the good position in the machine learning field, especially if you go for a machine learning data scientist. Have a lot many skills to achieve that position, but at least we can know that how we can equip ourselves to achieve that post. And since the data is growing in a very order of exabyte, as you could have seen, that it has been projected in the order of 40,000 exabyte, and the machine could do only 12,000 exabytes. Still miles to go. We have to achieve, in order to achieve the 40,000 limit. We have miles to go before sleep, as what could be told by Robert Frost. So I'll be grateful to say that we can have many more sessions in this regard, so that we can learn, or we can have a path how to move forward in this area, like artificial intelligence, or machine learning, or deep learning, whatever it may be. And it's the audience choice to choose whichever path they want. And I thank all audience who have joined from different colleges, and teachers, students, for making this session webinar a great success. So thank you very much for this program and webinar. session, for joining this session, and for participating in this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Arjun sir. Once again, thanks to Ms. Gauri Balachandran and Mr. John J. Padamadan for your information.